Merry Christmas. Oh, okay, I've got a few faithful here, but let me try this again. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
If you're joining us online, Merry Christmas to you guys. Thank you for coming in today and joining us in the room. It is a good day. How many of you have put up Christmas lights outside your house for this Christmas season? Okay, thank you. You guys are amazing. I have to compete with some neighbors who always have perfect lights and perfect decorations and perfect ways. As I was decorating my house, it took me all day yesterday. I mean, literally from like 9 o'clock, and I didn't finish till sundown. And it was just in a crazy moment. And I was reconfiguring some things. I was trying to reposition some stuff. I expanded a little bit. But I realized that there were moments where I had this ambition to get on top of my roof and actually decorate the shingles. You know what I'm talking about, like where you get the outline of the top of the house and you get the little, the crescent running across and you make it like where people can see. Right now, all you think is I have a flat roof the way it's set up. And so there have been times where I've put the ladder up on the side of the roof and I begin to climb up and then something takes hold of you, right? It's not the Christmas spirit either. It's like the Christmas fear. And I don't know if you guys know this, but there's a dangerous side to Christmas. Now, inside the house, it's pretty safe unless you have really high cabinets or something. But for the most part, it's a 2-step ladder at most, or you get your husband or your son, whoever the tallest person in your house is, to come do this. But putting up Christmas trees and decorations, but you don't realize that that's a dangerous thing. And you think to yourself, well, Kevin, seriously, I don't know what kind of decorations you put up, Chinese stars or something, but it's not really that dangerous. According to sciencenews.org, in the 10 years from 2007 to 2016, there were 173,000 accidents revolving around Christmas decorations and Christmas time. That's 17,300 per year, accidents. So, I began to think, how many people have been up on the roof, they've twisted an ankle, they fell off, and how many people were hanging stuff on the Christmas tree and a bulb fell and it landed on their foot and it cut, or they stepped onto the broken ornament later on. There's some dangerous aspects. You plugged in some lights you thought were working that your grandfather handed down to you, and you felt the fact that that wasn't really working well because it shocked you a little bit. So of the 173,000, let me just break down some of the big ones. Accidents with Christmas trees and Christmas tree stands. And it's real trees, fake trees, and stands, 54,838 people. When it comes to decorations, electrical and non-electrical, 116,262 people were injured. That's a 10-year period. There are 2,305 people who were injured by Christmas presents. You wonder, in my mind when I first read that, I was like, okay, so who's opening the present? They need some assistance. Mom needs to come help them. No, this is not really even children. Children are factored into this. But then they explain the reason there's so many incidents is that somebody whips out a blade, they grab the knife, and they begin to cut open the present. And then they don't realize their hand's in front of the present that they're opening, and it goes through and it cuts their hand open. Or they're doing something with usually it revolves around that plastic molding stuff they put around kids' toys. And it's like, they're afraid that somebody's going to steal the $5 Barbie, and it's so secure that they could put it out in New York and no one would be able to get into it. And so you have to take out major blades and chainsaws and electric knives. You're trying to cut this thing. Well, people hurt themselves messing with blades. Here's the one I found that was most interesting. In a 10-year period, there were 277 injuries for Santa impersonators. Maybe he had a hernia because he was carrying somebody else's bag that was too heavy. You think the little kids are coming to in your lap, and then you got the big Kevin Britton guy who comes and sits in your lap, right? You dislocate a hip. So it's not safe being a Santa impersonator. There is a dangerous side to Christmas, and so with wisdom, I did not get up on my roof. So if you drive by Texas Drive and you see my house, you will see my lights are kind of jinky, okay? But there's nothing that goes above the gutters. I just don't trust myself up there. If you want that, go look at Brad Kyle's house. Go look at Alan Atkinson's house. They've all kind of decorated the outlines. If you want to see simplicity and somebody who lives in safety, come see my house. How about this number? 11. That's the number of Christians who will die this month. 11. Seems insignificant, right? I mean, we talked about 173,000 people who injured themselves, but 11 people will lose their lives, an estimated 11 people because of their faith. It's 404,000 each year. And over that same 10-year period, it's an estimated 40,000 people who have died because of Jesus Christ. Merry Christmas. I know it seems odd to talk about something so heavy on a season that we think of swaddling clothes and moments of kindness and people bringing out cheer and being kind to each other. But just as Christmas has a dangerous side, Christmas also has a very dark side. And it has something that people respond to it in very difficult ways. We're going to get to it in a moment, but if you have your scriptures, I'm going to invite you to open up to our focal passage this morning, which is the warm, cuddly side of the Christmas story found in Matthew chapter 2, verses 16 through 18. Now, we'll get there in a moment. I want to remind you as you're turning there where we come from. Last week we said that Light of the World is our Christmas series, but that passage that we focused on was John chapter 8, verse 12, where Jesus makes this declarative statement. And he said, again, Jesus spoke to them, I am the light of the world. And in saying that, he was making this declaration, God has arrived. You are looking at me, you are looking at the most holy God. And people were really upset by this. The Pharisees, they couldn't believe that he had made this comment. But in making that comment, he is establishing himself that he is the image of God in physical form. He's not just going to allude to him. You look at Jesus, you're looking at God. And when he does that, he comes in, like I said this last week, not to a beautiful place, he comes into the darkest places. And they said last week that the focus was this, is that Jesus came and he was presenting God. And it says this in John chapter 1, verse 5, it says, the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. So Jesus didn't stay in heaven thinking, oh, these poor people, how can we help them? How can we do some things? Let's send another prophet. It wasn't the decision of God to do that. God said, nope, it's you, go, be in this place. And so he left the perfection of heaven. He came to the imperfection of earth, the dirtiness and the bickering and the fighting, and he went into the dark moment and he brought light. But notice that there's this phrase, and we kind of highlighted it last week, but in verse 5 it says, the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. I don't know if you understand that when John writes that, that means that there's this conflict taking place, that there's something fighting against the light presented in a dark area. Now, most of us would think, great. You know, you've been in that moment where the street lights are out and your headlights go out. I had a friend who was filling in the pulpit in the church I served in Virginia, and he was a pastor in Australia. And he and his wife had come over for 3 months to preach pulpit fill for our church while our pastor was on sabbatical. And so here he is talking his Australian accent, which was fascinating. But he and his wife rented a Chrysler LeBaron. So he's got a convertible. Summertime in D.C., it's hot, it's humid, but he wants to go experience Virginia life. And so they get in, they go down 95 north to D.C., they're driving around downtown. They stay out longer than they had planned to, and they got left in D.C., they got stuck in D.C. in the dark. And he pulls over on the side of the road, he sees a police officer, and they turn their lights off, and they're trying to figure out the map. He doesn't have GPS. This is 2004. So he pulls out the map, and he's trying to figure out. He's already driving on the wrong side of the road, so he's confused a little bit. Police officer comes over and taps on his door, says, roll down your window. He's got the convertible. But he rolls down his window, and he says, sir, why are you in this place? And he said, well, we're confused. And the moment he starts to speak, the officer realizes this man's lost. He's not a John. You see, where he stopped to get directions to figure out where he was the red light district of Washington, D.C. at night. So there are a lot of people around, but not the people he wants to meet. And the officer says, well, here's the problem. You need to go down here, turn right. And he mapped it out for them, and they went home. But he said in that moment, in that area, because sin reigned, lights were kept down low so people didn't have to show their faces in moments of human trafficking. And they didn't realize where they were until they shut their lights off, and it was abject darkness. Now, I think he's referring to a spiritual nature as well as a physical nature. But in that moment, he said darkness was there, and you begin to get scared. Jesus comes, and there's a conflict between the light and the darkness. And what we realize is that it's trying to overcome who he is and what he's doing. It's an eternal clash. It's a conflict of epic proportions. And there are times when we as human beings feel like that the darkness is winning, but the reality is that light has its place and is doing its thing. But it doesn't keep the darkness from doing some very dark and disturbing things. When the light shows up, some of us respond in joy. But there's a darker response, and I want you to read this with me, starting in chapter 2, verse 16 of Matthew. Now I'm going to dispel something for you before I read this passage. And students who were here last Wednesday, I kind of went through and destroyed some of your Christmas traditions. Apologize for that at some level. But I want you to realize that the passage we're about to read, there's a significant declaration, a significant revelation. The shepherds who were in the field came into Bethlehem and saw Jesus right after he was born. There's no disputing that story. They walked in, and just what the angel had said is just what they saw. He's lying there with his mother, swaddling clothes. There's animals. They're in whatever style of animal pen. It could have been a cave or a barn. Most likely it was a cave. But the wise men, they don't come at that moment. In fact, experts think they didn't come until after a year after Jesus was born. Could have been closer to 2 years. And the reason they say that is there were two phrases. In the wise men story, it says they visited the house, not the stable. Number two is what we're about to read in Herod's response. You see, the wise men had come, and they came into the capital city of Jerusalem, and they're looking to find where this Messiah was born. And there's no reason to believe that they were believers of God, but the revelation was so powerful that they had figured this thing out. And Herod had not heard of this yet. He didn't realize there was the star moving across the sky, settled on this house, and was revealing the place where the Messiah had been born. So he gets to be a little curious. And in the story, the conversation between the wise men, which was most likely more than three. I know we see, the three wise men, we three kings. There were at least three. There could have been dozens of them. We don't know. They brought three gifts, and we kind of associate that number with a number of people. Doesn't matter. But they have a conversation with Herod. He becomes inquisitive. He calls him back in and says, tell me more about this Messiah. And so they begin to talk about where the star was and the prophecies and what they read. And they begin to reveal the dates and times. And he says, well, great, go visit. When you find him, come back to me and tell me the story of what you've seen. And so they go, they find Jesus, they find Mary and Joseph, and it's a special moment. And then the Spirit speaks to the wise men, don't go home the same way you came. And so they rerouted themselves and they disregarded Herod. And so we pick up in verse 16. Then Herod, when he saw that he had been tricked by the wise men, became furious. And he sent and killed all the male children in Bethlehem and in all that region who were 2 years old or under, according to the time that had been ascertained from the wise men. Then was fulfilled what was spoken by the prophet Jeremiah. A voice was heard in Ramah, weeping in loud lamentation, Rachel weeping for her children. She refused to be comforted because they are no more. We like to think that Christmas elicits a response of kindness. We like to think that Christmas brings about an action of benevolence. We have a tendency in our culture to see that canned good drives are most profitable at this time of the year. Between Thanksgiving and the end of the year, this is what people want to give. Fundraising is up. People who volunteer their time is up. But the reality is there is a dark response to the light coming in the darkness. In this story of Herod, it's very clear that darkness tries to kill the light. How is this part of the Christmas story? We thought everybody liked Jesus, but the truth is, what we see in Scripture is that darkness tries to kill the light. This isn't the first time. If we go back to Exodus chapter 1, you don't have to go there, just listen. In Exodus chapter 1, there was a situation where Pharaoh was concerned about his rulingship over the Jews, who were the Hebrews, the Israelites, who were slaves. They were becoming too numerous. So he tells the midwives, you're giving birth, and if it's a Jewish family, an Israelite family, as they give birth and you deliver the baby, if it's a male child, I want you to do something. And so in verse 15, the king of Egypt said to the Hebrew midwives, one of whom was named Shiphrah and the other name was Puah, when you serve as midwife to the Hebrew women and see them on the birth stool, if it is a son, you shall kill him. But if it is a daughter, she shall live. Light coming into the world, he was afraid that he was going to be overtaken, and so his response was to kill it. And the darkness tries in all of its might and all of its power to kill anything associated with the light. John chapter 3. And this is the judgment. The light has come into the world. I would love to stop there. And just finish it, right? That light came in. But listen to what it finishes in John chapter 3. It says, light came into the world, and people loved the darkness rather than the light, because their works were evil. For everyone who does wicked things hates the light, and does not come to the light, lest his works be exposed. But whoever does what is true comes to the light, so that it may be clearly seen that his works have been carried out in God. I know we like to put that off to the side. We like to think about the swaddling clothes and the tenderness, the quiet moment, the sheep baying in the background, right? And it must have smelled like gingerbread in the stable, right? I mean, she must have had some potpourri going on. I'm sure it was potpourri, but it wasn't gingerbread. And we would like to think that Christmas affects all people the same way. But we have to understand that in a world that doesn't know God, their response is evil because they are disregarding him. They don't see other people as human beings. Darkness likes to slip its way in. See, Jesus came in and he was having this conflict with the light, and there's a struggle going on. Now, what I'd like to think, it's like me struggling against my dad when I'm a 3-year-old. I think I might be winning. Right, we're playing uncle, and I've got him at his fingertips, and I try to work it, and I bend him, and he goes down to the ground, and he's like, whoa, he's like crying out, oh, this is painful, right? But 3-year-old Kevin's not going to feed 48-year-old Bill Britton. But I like to think I was. And then all of a sudden, Father turns and reminds me who has the true power. You see, darkness likes to think it can kill the light. Darkness likes to think it can come and eradicate hope. Darkness likes to come and think that it can create despair. That's the thing we struggle with at Christmas. Unresolved family relationships. And all of a sudden we're forced into Christmas to have to think about these things. You know, there's nothing more torturous, in my opinion, than having to buy a Christmas present for someone you don't like. Am I right? Because you're standing there at the counter and you're thinking, I really want to buy them this thing that's found in the sheep stables, right? That's free. I can go grab that. In fact, they'll probably pay me to clear it out. I want to give that as a gift, but it's not appropriate. It's not appropriate for the family get together. So I have to stand here and figure out what I'm going to give this person. And it's a conflict because I don't like them. I want to disregard, but if I don't see God's presence and God's image in that person, then I am doing the evil thing. Now, let's be honest. I don't know that I've ever seen a commercial, I've ever seen a display that showed Jesus being killed. At Christmas time, that's not what we see. And so our culture likes to kill the light softly and quietly. Now, let me say again, I'm not here to war against our culture. That is not my business today. But when I take Christmas and I remove its central image and I replace it with something that has no significance to it, it's a slow death. Now I've got two options. I can remove myself from culture. I can say I'm done with that. I'm not going to participate. I'm not going to talk about it. You can say happy holidays all you want. I'm going to go home and rant about it. I'm going to get on Facebook and make all kinds of declarative statements. I'm going to make sure people know where I stand on Facebook. But I do not want to be involved in a culture that does not put its faith in Jesus Christ. And if I make that statement, if I remove myself, I'm doing opposite of what Jesus Christ did. And in that moment, guess what I've done? I've tried to kill the light. Now, I may not be Herod and going out and taking the lives of innocent babies, but I've just committed an act of evil because I disregarded God and the people that need to hear God the most. And sometimes I can do that by becoming so overbearing in my faith that I don't listen to anyone else. I just walk around and tell everybody what they should be doing. Merry Christmas. Instead of listening to what the conversation is and asking God, give me wisdom in this moment. Light is coming into this. They're talking about it from an evil perspective, not because they're necessarily a bad person. They just don't understand God. And I'm here, so let me hear how I can speak about Jesus Christ. Let me see how I can take one little glimpse of a light and bring it into a dark place. My wife and I, when we did church planning back in Virginia, we were reading through some books that were recommended for us. And there was a moment of confusion because this author and his wife kept talking about how God had sent them to this dark, evil, disenfranchised place that God did not exist. And he put them there, and it was such a hard struggle for them to establish the church and preach the gospel and share the good news and witness to people. And so as we read this book, we thought, well, they must be talking about some foreign country. They must be in Eastern Europe, Soviet Union. Maybe they're in Africa, some Muslim nation. They were in Charlottesville, Virginia. And we kind of looked at each other and thought, how is that a dark place? I mean, I've been to Charlottesville. It's actually a really nice college town. UVA's there, University of Virginia. It's got great old architecture, colonial style. You've got some great campus activities. It's a great town. I've got some friends who live there. And so I shared with them. I was like, I read this book, and this is what they said. And you know what their response was to me? Absolutely. And I couldn't understand why. Why would you think that Charlotte? Because I'm thinking dark and evil is like, living in the Gaza Strip where there's always tire fires and there's rockets flying over. And they said, no, the reason it's dark is because they choose to disenfranchise themselves from God. They lack the knowledge. They're super intelligent, but they disregard Him. And in that sense, spiritually, it's one of the darkest places we've ever lived. Denton has that same reputation. 3 colleges, 3 major universities, plus a community college. But it has the reputation to be a difficult place for the light to shine because the darkness of ignorance pushes in and tries to kill it. I got Mart over here nodding his head. He went to high school in Denton. He knows. He survived the darkness. But when it says that he came in and darkness could not overcome it, it's a statement of victory, right? When it says that whoever is the true light, see that they clearly seen his works and can be carried out by God. When we do these things in the broad view of the light, there's a declaration that Jesus Christ is alive. We've already said that He is God and He has come for salvation. But the darkness is trying to fight against it. And I think sometimes we forget about that conflict in the moment of Christmas. But I want you to know this. That based on what we see in Scripture, Jesus doesn't just win out. He doesn't just get a narrow victory. It isn't an upset. Jesus Christ obliterates the darkness. He destroys it completely. It's not a fair fight. He crushes it under the strength of His heel and the weight of His glory. Jesus Christ comes and He establishes Himself the light, and no matter how much the darkness fights against it, He will overcome. That's a victory statement for you and for me. Because this is a difficult time of year, am I right? That these things that we struggle with, this weight of heaviness and this depression, sometimes it sneaks in on us because of maybe people we're missing or maybe things we don't have. And then we remember there's victory to be had. It's not coming. It's already come. Jesus, He won't obliterate it in the future tense. He's already obliterated it. He's already destroyed it completely. John 16. I have said these things to you, then in me you may have peace. He's talking to His disciples. He's about to go away. But then He says this, in the world you will have tribulation. Amen. Man, boy, that's like wisdom right there. I mean, you've probably had 5 or 6 different conflicts this week. But then He says this, take heart. I have overcome the world. It's not a question. It's already done. You've yet to experience fully because you're still struggling to let go of some of the things. But He tells the disciples, hope and peace. because I have overcome. We hold on to that same promise. Because he has overcome and we are his children, we will celebrate in his victory. It is given to us. He obliterates the darkness. I wonder if you realize what that means for you. That at one point there was a place where you were just as evil as Herod. And there are moments even today when we disregard the birth of Christ and we celebrate secular notions of Christmas and happy holidays. Now, I want you to listen to this very carefully. I don't care what you do at home. It's not my concern this morning. If you celebrate whatever you celebrate. But we said last week, try to bring Jesus into some of these celebrations. But if I don't understand what I'm doing in the context of who Jesus Christ is, then I'm evil. You know, the condemnation that Paul gave to the church in Corinth about the communion wasn't because of people who didn't know Jesus coming in and taking communion. That wasn't the issue. To them, it's just food and drink. It's no big deal. His correction was for you and I. When we take these things and don't consider what Jesus Christ has done for us, when we don't consider our brothers and sisters as we take this together, when we fight for resources that aren't ours to fight for, when we disregard the image of God in every single person around us, and that we expect to come and take this, that's where condemnation comes. But when you and I, as brothers and sisters and believers in Jesus Christ, remember that Jesus came, it opens up a little place in our heart. You see, I don't want to be like the innkeeper. I don't want to be the innkeeper that says, sorry, Jesus, no room here. I love you, going to be at church on Sunday, but no room today. Sorry, can you go find someplace else? I think there's some space in the back room, sunroom, maybe the bathroom, but not here today. I don't want to be Herod. I don't want to be Herod that even as a believer, I'm not open to what God is doing. And in turn, in my behaviors and my thoughts, I'm killing the things that God is doing around me because I'm ignorant to it. You see, it wasn't so much that Herod didn't know, it's the fact that in the conflict of light and darkness, Herod's power was challenged and he thought he was God. Now that's a small thing. They say that the number of children that were killed in Bethlehem that day, in that season, may have been somewhere between a half dozen to a dozen. Now, that's a loss of life and it's horrible. But this dude was so dark that he thought his sons would overthrow him, and guess what he did? He killed them. Why is it important for us to look at this darkness in this season of Christmas? It's because if you don't understand the darkness of the world and how it treats the birth of the Savior, you will not understand how to respond to it. You don't understand how precious it is that in this moment of playing a game or taking a battle or trying to conquest the world, that God could have sent a heavenly host of angels. You know, David standing in the balsam trees, and it says, when the trees move, you'll know I've gone ahead of you and the victory is won. He could have done an action like that. He could have taken a person like Gideon and raised up an army of incompetent soldiers who are simply breaking jars and they win the battle. He could have done it any way he wanted to. But in his brilliance and in his plan, he sent a baby in to the darkest moments to kill. And that's what threatened the darkness. You're going to give presents this Christmas. Are you giving presents in light of Jesus Christ? You've decorated your houses. Have you added in an understanding that the way you decorate reveals your belief about who Jesus Christ is? I sent my daughter to the hardware store to pick up an automatic timer. Because I've got two in the front yard, but the front yard won't reach the backyard. I did some decorations in the backyard. I mean, we're going full-blown Las Vegas Christmas vacation moment here at the Britton house. All right? 5:30, you can see the meter spins a little faster. They're LEDs, so I hope. So I sent her the story. She calls, she says, hey, is this the right one? And we're sending pictures back and forth. But at 5:30, things change at my house, and outside, lights come on. How many of you have lights? We said that, raise your hand again if you've got lights outside of your house. How many of you have Christmas lights inside of your house? How many of you have decorated your trees? You got wreaths, nativity scenes. You got little plaques that say, you know, unto us a child is born, and you're watching Christmas movies. I got feet, I'm gonna raise those too. See, our culture wants to remove any semblance of hope. My job is to demonstrate hope. Not because I carry it, but because it was given to me. My culture wants to take out any sense of salvation because that would mean they need something. And I'm called to walk in those dark places, revealing that we all have a need. So the question becomes, knowing that the light and the darkness are in this epic conflict, and Jesus has overcome it, but the darkness is trying to kill it, and that's the world you live in. That's your home. That's your neighborhood. That's your classroom. That's your office space. That's your conference room. The mental battle that's up here. How will you do something that continues to remind yourself, to remind the world that light has come and it's going to win? It has won. It has always been in victory. And that anybody who professes faith in Jesus Christ and calls out his name will be saved. I mean, that's the blessing of a baby being born in a manger, is that soon he will go to the cross, and then he will go to the grave, and then he will conquer death visibly, and then he will walk with his people, and he will sit at the right hand of God after he ascends, and he will be the high priest for us in perfection. But it begins with this baby lying in a manger. And you know what? If we're not careful, we fall in love with the tenderness of Christmas. And I got to confess this. Early mornings, Saturday morning, I got up. I woke up early. It doesn't normally happen on a Saturday morning, but I had a lot of stuff to do. So I got up, I walked in, got myself a cup of coffee, still had my jammies on, went to the fireplace, opened it up, put some logs in, lit the fire, closed it up, went and found a Christmas movie, made sure that, Christmas lights on the tree, Christmas trees turned on, and it's just quiet. Everybody else is asleep. And I just sit back on the couch and I take in that moment. The fire's going, and I'm looking around, and I've got Mary and Joseph, pregnant Mary, on the donkey. I've got the board up there, it has the Christmas star, and it's got a little saying, scripture verse. We have more nativity scenes than probably anybody in the free world who decorates their house. Everything from like precious moments to Fontanini. And we got cut out wood, we've got negative images, anything that's like, and I'm just sitting here with the fire going, drinking coffee, and I'm taking a moment in because it's a tender moment, and I love that. I love when my family comes in and we try to capture a moment, Christmas Eve, Christmas night, where it's just quiet and just relax for a moment, and we love that. It draws us in, and there's nothing wrong with this. We love the tenderness of Christmas, but you know what we celebrate? The tenacity of Christmas. If it was just tenderness, there would be no conquering victory. But because the tenacity of God, sending in a baby into a moment of darkness to be his greatest soldier to fight against the darkness, was a brilliant move. Because what happens is the image of the baby kind of softens us a little bit, and then the reality of the light coming into the darkness to change people's hearts and to take away your sinfulness then changes you. Love the tenderness, but celebrate the tenacity. So how do we do this? How do we keep in our minds that this obliteration took place, that Jesus is the conquering hero? I want to challenge you that every light that you turn on for Christmas season, every light, bathroom, fridge, Christmas decorations, the house lights, the tree lights, if you've got the little decorations made out of clay and it has one little light that shines on Mary and Joseph, if you've got big, huge displays where you're spelling out joy to the world on your front lawn, whenever you turn on a light, I pray that God reminds you that that's Jesus Christ piercing the darkness. That's an easy thing, right? You're going to go home today, the sun's going to go down, and you're going to flip on the light. Thank you, God, for giving Jesus Christ. You're going to walk over to your Christmas tree, and if you're like us, you're just going to find it on the floor someplace until it turns on, because it's a foot pedal, right? For whatever reason, it tends to find its way underneath the tree skirt. Right? So you look like you're at a hoedown, waiting for Christmas to come. Yeehaw, right? You walk over and you turn the Christmas lights on. Just take a moment and say, thank you, God, that Jesus defeated darkness. Make your kids walk around the house at night with the lights turned off. Right? Let them know what it feels like to walk in darkness just for a moment, and then shine the flashlight. Thank you, God, for Jesus coming and obliterating the darkness. Try opening your gifts in the dark. See who gets what. Make it fun. No, I'm just playing. Don't do that. Grandma would get upset. All I'm saying is, in the simplest of things, of one flickering, tinkling, warm glow of a light bulb, bring you to a moment of worship and praise, because you are reminded of Jesus Christ. And you're standing outside your house, making sure that all your house lights are on, right? All the lights that twinkling. You got the music set on, and your lights are in sync with the music. Some of you are like that. I know, it's okay. The rest of the neighborhood prays for you as they drive by and admire what you've done. Your yard art is twinkling, lights are on, and you're standing back and you're making sure everything's working perfectly, and you're kind of admiring your handiwork, while your family sits in the house going, can you just come in? No, I gotta make sure it's all working right. And somebody comes by, yeah, Christmas vacation. Somebody comes by and says, great display. Now, they may be sarcastic, they may be genuine. You don't know, it's not your business. Just accept the compliment, well, thank you. You know, I was thinking, with all these lights, all 25,365 lights that are on right now, this reminds me that there was a darkness that Jesus came in. Can you take your decorations and give them a significant internal explanation? That the flicking on of a light, the turning on of a tree, the display of whatever ornaments you have, anything that is light-based reminds us that this world is dark and it's fighting against God. It would love to kill anything. We just said 11 people this month will die because of their faith. Now, we may think we don't live in a conflict-driven society that hates Christianity, but you would be wrong. And it will do everything it can to disregard God in any way during this time of celebration. And I just want you to be spiritually sensitive and aware of how you can create a conversation because of who Jesus Christ is. He's the light of the world, and he obliterates the darkness. My other prayer for us today as we walk out of here is that all of us carry Christmas baggage. Not the stuff that Santa carries around with gifts on it, but it's like the stuff you carry around that has old memories in it. Man, let God have that. You wouldn't give that as a gift to anybody else, but your Father would consider that an incredible gift. And it's not often that we kneel at somebody's feet and give them a Christmas present, but how awesome would it be if you took those dark things that are in that bag and just laid it at his feet and say, Merry Christmas. It's yours. You know how different you would feel if you could do that? You know, they say that Christmas season is one of the darkest seasons emotionally. And actually the reality is that January is the darkest season emotionally. There are more attempts at people's lives in January than there are in December. And I think it's because they realize they came out of Christmas and how much they owe. This is a dark time. You come out of Christmas and there was all the hype of all the people and the parties and everything was going on, and then January becomes really quiet. And if we don't have this light thing in our life, we don't have this gratitude, and we aren't celebrating Jesus Christ, January becomes a dark month. But if I'm celebrating the light, guess what? January 1st, there's a ball that drops. And guess what that ball is made out of? Lights. I still have to pay an electrical bill because I'm still going to flip on switches in my house. And my hope and my prayer is that Jesus obliterating the darkness isn't just a Christmas thing, but you're reminded all year long, every time you flip a switch. Don't get angry at the stoplight downtown. You see the light come on. Praise Jesus. I mean, you could double praise if it's green, but if it's red, take a moment. You got a moment to rest and relax. I mean, enjoy it. It's like 30 seconds, but it's 30 seconds of bliss, not anger. Jesus is the light of the world. And his life was the light of men. And anyone who professes that name is saved. That's a great flip to switch. That's a great way to flick it. It's a great way to switch the knob. Whatever you do to turn on the lights and just simply take a moment and say, thank you, God, for coming into the darkest moments of my life and bringing Jesus Christ, who is the greatest light that has ever existed in mankind. And I pray that your Christmas decorations, more than causing 173,000 injuries, may bring someone to faith because you used it to share the gospel. Jesus is the light, and he obliterates the darkness. Let's pray. I want you just to spend a moment. Don't look up, just spend a moment, have a conversation with God. First of all, give thanks. It's not only that Jesus Christ was the light of the world, but he came in and he destroys the darkness as something that brings hope. And that's a great Christmas to celebrate. And that celebration takes place because we realize how dark this world is without Christ. So just take a moment and give thanks. This week, for most of us, has been crazy. You're trying to get all your presents in order. You've got end-of-year business to take care of. You've got family trips and plans. You've got gatherings. You've got decorations to put up. This has been probably one of the busiest weeks of the year for you. And it's not over yet. You see, the light, what it does is it brings us into a place where we realize we can see there's a revelation of what's true, what's most important. And this morning, we get to sit together in the presence of our Father. So I want you just to take a moment and try to picture that in your mind. What does it look like? This beautiful light. He looks with you with great affection. You respond with gratitude. But see, there's this phrase that God has a tendency to say when he's in a moment with us. And it begins with abide. Stay here just for a moment. And that's what happened with the disciples, right? Jesus said, stay, don't move. But then there came a time when they were scattered. And it's hard for us to have conversations about the light if we don't go into dark places. It's easy to talk about the light with people who own the light. But what's the point in that? And so, just like Jesus entered into the darkest moments, God has placed light in our hearts and in our lives so that we can walk into dark places. So you're about to be sent. Prepare us, Father, as we leave this place today, that we will walk into dark places. And sometimes we're prepared for that. We see it coming. But Father, sometimes it catches us off guard. It blindsides us. It takes us from our blind spot. And so, Father, I pray that we are so familiar with the light, that we are so grateful for it, that we look for it, desire for it, and that, Father, that in those moments when darkness shows up, that we have the ability to speak into that moment. Prepare us for that. And so in this next moment, I'm going to have our prayer team just stay where they're at. And we're just going to pray. You want to confess some things? Spend time in confession. You want to lay some things at God's feet? Take that sack off and give it to him. If you want to come up here to the altar and pray, come up to the altar and pray. It's fine. There's no one up here. It's just you. We're not even going to stand this morning. We're just going to stay in our seats. There are things that are on the screen. Look up and pray over those things. I'm sure there are plenty of things on your plate to pray about. When I think everybody's had a chance to pray and respond to God this morning, I'll close this out. Just take this next moment and have a conversation with him. Gracious Father, today has been all about you. Thank you for pursuing us. Thank you for showing your strong desire to draw people into relationship. And Father, I pray that today that we realize just how devious and how wicked the darkness is. I know it's difficult for us to comprehend that, Father, but in this moment of Christmas, there are dark moments. But Father, we are not subject to that. We as children are not captive to those dark moments. And Father, what you've done is you've reminded us in the presence of light that there is hope, that there is victory, that there is an overcoming aspect to this life. And it's not meant for us to simply sit behind walls of safety, but it's meant for us to respond. And just as Jesus came into the dark world and the darkness tried to overcome it, but he was victorious, Father, call us into that victory march. And I pray that each one of us would go home today and purposefully take moments to give you thanks. That the Spirit will remind us that every light bulb we come across is a reminder of who Jesus Christ is. And then in that moment, we give thanks and praise you. That is a beautiful Christmas moment, Father. Thank you for our time together today. Pray that as we leave here, that we take this light and we do something with it. But Father, thank you for putting that light into our hearts and giving us Jesus Christ. And as we see that little baby laying in a manger, decorations, we're reminded that light is victorious. We give thanks and we praise you and we pray in Jesus Christ's victorious name. Amen. I appreciate and just say thank you for coming to worship today. It's been good. It's been a weird Christmas message to talk about death, but thank God for life that comes through Jesus Christ. In honor of quiet moments, in honor of peacefulness, we overloaded the worship bulletin this morning. So it's both sides. Make sure you take a look. Ladies Connect is tomorrow night, so take a look at that time. We have a Christmas schedule in the back that talks about everything from offices closing to Wednesday nights to all kinds of activities that are happening on campus. So we'll keep updating this as the next few weeks go on. But take this home. Keep an eye on what's going on. But on the inside, on this flap, there's all kinds of things, but I want to draw your attention to a couple of things that we need to make sure we're paying attention to. First of all, tonight this afternoon at 4 o'clock, we're having a community chat. And it's just to let you guys know how we plan on spending our tithes and offerings next year. There's some things that we're doing. There's some things we did mid-year after we accomplished some goals that we have set up. And so now we're going to kind of change our focus from saving to spending and actions. And so I want you to come tonight, see it, ask questions. You can give some input. Our elders will be there to listen to your input. If we feel like that's something we need to add into our budget, we've got time before the year ends to make a budget change. We did it last year. Our conversation brought up a question about us as a church sponsoring the Sylvies in the Philippines. We hadn't done that as a church for a while. And so people were giving individually, but as a church, we decided we would commit a certain amount of money to give to them as they continue to do mission work in the Philippines. That's because you guys thought it was a good idea. We followed it. So I want you to come tonight. Here are some things. Ask questions and see what we're going to be doing next year in terms of our budget. The other thing is this. Other things. I'm just going to go down the line. Christmas Eve worship. We don't do Christmas Eve worship here like normal churches, traditional churches. What we invite you to do is to go home and worship as a family. Last year we started this. Historically, we've had 50 to 75 people who would come on a Christmas Eve to do a candlelight communion time. Sometimes it was 15 to 20. Last year, over 250 people engaged in community worship services, home Christmas Eve worship. I like that. Thank you. So here's what we do. Just sign up, tell us how many people you got, how many children, and we give you all the elements. We provide a booklet that walks you through how to do it. We give you songs to sing. We give you candles to light. We give you communion elements. And we ask that as a family, you worship together and take communion in honor of Jesus Christ coming on Christmas Eve. If that's something you want to do, sign up over at the welcome desk. There are Christmas box envelopes. We each year give out food to people in need here in our community. Last year we served about 180 to 185 families. This year we're expecting that to increase. The cost for each of those boxes that we give out is about $35. We're doing it this Friday at the expo from 8 o'clock until 6 o'clock that evening. If you're wanting to come help pack boxes and hand out stuff, then get in touch with me, email me. But you can easily support that action by taking an envelope off the Christmas tree and putting $35 in, or whatever God lays in your heart, putting the offering, and it'll go straight towards the benevolence action of the Puritan Christian Church Alliance, formerly known as the Ministerial Alliance. So we're expecting probably over 200 families that will come and get resources for Christmas. So we invite you to participate in that. And then I'll end on this. There are other things on here, but last Monday, we had a group of ordained pastors gathered together to review the request by Jason Van Ostal to be ordained. Looked at his application, we listened to his testimony, his call to ministry. There was zero input from our congregation about any concerns we would have. And as we sat around the table, these 7 pastors began to talk about who Jason was and just what God had been doing in his life in different aspects, from the mission field to working at Jireh to being on staff together as an elder, partnering with him in certain things, and just over and over again, it was affirmation that God has done something and has a special calling on Jason's life. And so that council unanimously recommended to ordain Jason Van Ostal. Yeah, we need to celebrate that. I would love to tell you that it's all about Jason, but selfishly, it's about what God is doing in our church. And it's a good thing for us. So we're going to take the last Christmas message and we're going to shelve it for another time on the 29th, which was looking at Jesus' return, the light coming back. And we're going to have an ordination service on the morning of the 29th. We invite you to come. It's just a normal worship service, but Jason will give his testimony in both areas of calling and salvation. I'll represent the council and present to you some things that were said specifically. And then we're going to have a time where our ordained pastors will pray over him. And then we'll have a chance for the congregation to come and pray. And that'll be our official ordination of Jason Van Ostal on December the 29th. So mark it in your calendars. If you're busy traveling, be back here that day. It is an incredible time for us, and we would love for you to be a part of that special moment. There are other things to talk about, but we're out of time. Make sure you stop by the selfie station, take some pictures of your family, especially this one over here. You might be able to get pictures. Last week with Jason's suit, everybody wanted pictures with Jason. So I told him we should make a cutout poster of him and put it there so families can take a picture. But we've got a replacement, a live, living replacement right here. But if you do, hashtag CWC Perryton, and let us kind of see those things. Post them to Facebook. Let us see how you're celebrating. And we just want you to know Christmas in the community is a really special thing. But Jesus Christ is who? Light of the world. What are you called to do? Leave this place and go be the light. We'll see you back here next week as we continue to celebrate Christmas.